In the 40th year of this photo, taking place in October 1968, I was 8 years old at the time, which was about 6 months after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, which I was 7 at that particular time. And you know, in these two footnotes, with the significance of last year, in the 40th commemoration of the assassination of Dr. King, and John Carlos and Tommy Smith throwing their fist in the air at the '68 Olympics, were kind of like, I wouldn't say like underplayed, but I think it's something as far as those that know should actually bring it out front, and that's what I tried to do last year. So as much as I, you know, praise this accomplishment, I also talked about the importance of these things being a precedent to what happened last year with Barack Obama being elected president. Barack Obama's presidency has stood on the efforts of many before him. You can't remove Reverend Al Sharpton, what he did in 2004 and how he spoke, and you can't remove Jesse Jackson, how he spoke in '84 and '88.
Or maybe Reverend Wright.
Yeah, or Reverend Wright. I mean, you can't diminish a lot of the things that have been done in the past by the contributors to build to this point where Barack Obama is at. And you just want to be able to believe if it does bear fruit, that the fruit is for everybody and all the people, instead of just a select few. And so far, the system has always been worried about the status quo and the select few. If the select few have a problem, then all of a sudden there's a problem. If the select few don't have a problem, then it's the running of the Bulls' 80s. You know, I look at the R&B period of 1980s, and that was Reagan and Bush. It was a terrible period. But to people that, you know, were in the stock market, they made a lot of money, they talk about all these glorious times. And I'm like, well, who the hell were they talking to? And it wasn't talking to me. You know, I made my music in the 80s to #1 Rage Against the Machine. So I had reasons to make what I made at that particular time. It wasn't like I just jumped on the thing because this was the hot thing to do.
There's a lot about this poster that I love, and there's a lot about it that I just hope people don't go to sleep on. First of all, Rosa Parks did way more than just sit. I mean, this is a woman who 11 years before was thrown off the bus by the same bus driver for doing the exact same thing. And she has a legacy of organizing that starts way before this. And of course, we know that black women were the ones that were behind the bus boycott in Montgomery. But she was trained by Septima Poinsett Clark, who was a teacher and a social worker and who was at the Highlander School in Tennessee. And Rosa Parks learned from her. And it's not, you know, but a few months after Emmett Till is lynched that Montgomery bus boycott becomes the most articulate, the most eloquent articulation of the lynching of a teenager, of a child. So there's much more going on than Rosa Parks sitting. And the reason I mention that is because Martin Luther King knew that when he became the appointed spokesperson, appointed not just by men, clergymen, but women as well, who had been involved in this movement way before he came on the scene, and how young he was. This is another thing that I think a lot of people miss. He and Malcolm X were both only 39 when they died. And Martin Luther King was in his late 20s when he began this organizing with the Montgomery bus boycott. The point I'm trying to make here is that in this constellation that we have the force of history, a long, long history, that all of these people acknowledge that they both come from and stand upon. Women, men, children, and in all of their various ways, even when they disagreed, all of these things came together to form what we now very loosely call the movement. I don't know that I agree with the backdrop of the entire poster, which is the American flag. I mean, in many ways, you know, this is something that, of course, came out of racism that was uniquely American. And these are Americans here, but it's not something that I think in this moment America can claim as their legacy, you know, which I mean, as their history, which is, I think, what they're trying to do with Obama is to say, look what we have accomplished. We've grown up, even in Obama's words, too.
Well,
you know,
they need to get a rolled up poster of that one over there.
Yeah.
They're going to claim.
Yeah, maybe the backdrop needs to be the slave ships, everybody packed in tightly. The point I'm trying to make is that, you know, all of this is true. All of these things happen, and what I love about this poster is that Barack Obama is in many ways, yes, the culmination of all of these things, but will he and the people that are around him acknowledge it in the ways that are true and meaningful and that give dignity to black people, not just white liberals who want to claim this history as their own now, even though they are pro, policing, they're at this very moment, enacting all kinds of policies against fair housing and fair hiring. These are the people we call liberals. We hope that the legacy of radicalism that is inherent in the politics of Rosa Parks, King, Malcolm X can also find a home in Obama's America as well.
We fought Malcolm X, we spoke Martin Luther King, but you can actually, switch these. Martin Luther King fought. He fought like hell against hell. And Malcolm X spoke. He wasn't actually going out there using guns and using a bat and so I mean these could be actually reciprocated.
I'm watchful of the Obama moment, but there are a lot of indignities that, some small, some not, that he's endured already as a black man in Washington. And no matter what his politics are,
yep,
he is not immune from racism, and neither is his wife or his children. And just because he hasn't mentioned it, I think it's the cool points that everybody's giving him. I think radicals and conservatives and people in between are giving Obama the cool points for allowing us to forget that history is still present moment. But there are many, many indignities that he has endured, and nobody, I think, can chalk them up to anything else but racism.
And just like going back to an interview a couple of weeks ago, Larry King was talking on his TV show to a young black man who wants to be a journalist. As a matter of fact, he's 10, 11 years old and actually won a contest to actually, interview people at the inauguration, one of the inaugural balls. And, Larry King tells him and said, well, my youngest kid wants to be black. And we think that this is a notion that has two sides to it, but it's cool wanting to be black for all the good things and all the hip things, but it's more than just a trend here. It's more than just this cultural, upshot of like, wow, now everything is cool, No, there's another side to that.
It's a different sacrifice, I think. I mean, we can list the numerous sacrifices that Obama has and will make, and they will be many and more than many of us will know, I think. But it's not the same in the sense that Obama is the product of Ivy League education. He's the product of a particular kind of class sensibility. He's actually probably more elite than the Clintons in many ways. And what I think has been smart is that he hasn't tried to claim a background that's been about poverty, although I think he has tried to claim a grassroots background that some people who really been there on the ground, who have worked with Valerie Jarrett in Chicago and who know the kind of sacrifices of grassroots politics that people like her and other folks have made in order to put themselves in a position to run a black man for president. I think a lot of those folks would be very critical of putting Barack Obama visually in that kind of legacy. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Rosa Parks got bricks thrown at their heads successfully. Their children were beat up, persecuted all their lives. Their families paid prices, whether it was, suicide or murder or, mental illness. These are not probably this is probably not the kind of price that Obama is going to have to pay. Does that make him a more authentic politician or a more does that make his struggle or their struggle more authentic because they paid a sort of price of brutality? I mean, I think we have to be careful about romanticizing their struggles. But at the same time, I think that in this moment, people have to be very careful about equating Obama's sacrifice with that of King and X and Parks and Evers and Till and all those folks.